There are 1,000,000 ways to die. We just wanna talk about it. Codeheads.
Welcome back, all you Codeheaders. We have missed you. It's been a whole week since we have last reached out and touched you.
Yeah. Good to see everyone back.
It is. We're happy to have you. And we've had a lot of feedback recently. We've got a lot of notes. So keep it up. And remember actually to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to us.
Yes, please.
We need and love the ratings. Not for our egos, just for, I guess, life and to stay relevant. Our egos can handle it. But today we actually want to talk to you guys about something that Mike and I have briefly touched on a couple of times, but we really want to dig into it a little bit more. Talking about CPR in schools, not just for the teachers having it required and, those who work in school being trained in AED use and CPR, but the students. It's a whole bunch of kids that are there and able-bodied and willing to learn. And it's really an untapped area. So we want to talk about the laws nationally and then some of the state requirements and some of the areas where we're kind of lacking. So I guess we will say that there is no national law. So as I'm dropping a national saying we're going to talk about it, there isn't one. But it is a state-by-state mandate, for lack of better terms. There have been bills that have gone by in various states to require CPR training to students in schools. And we looked into this before so we could give you guys the most up-to-date stats. And as of today, there are only 5 states out in the U.S. that it's not mandated, or a bill has not yet been passed. It's pending in Alaska and Massachusetts, shockingly, because Massachusetts is usually at the forefront of a lot of things like this.
The irony of Boston being, a medical epicenter and the Commonwealth has no mandate. At this point, it is, being worked on, but as of this moment, these able-bodied kids, as you said, are not learning CPR.
And I do find it interesting that Alaska, it's still pending because I feel like that has a lot of, very rural areas, and the more people trained in cardiac arrest response and knowing CPR would be hugely helpful within that population. So hopefully they will approve theirs as well, and get all the kids trained. And and to be clear, some of the states' mandates are for students that are planning on going into healthcare sciences or something of that nature. Vocational schools are that are going for, an RN license or to be a medical assistant, etc. That's where the requirement lies. So it's not all high school age students, which I would love to see that it's, to graduate high school, you have to get CPR training. And if you get your GED, you have to get CPR training as well. I would love to see that just so that, more people have the skills and feel empowered to respond.
Yeah, and we're both quite impassioned about this topic. We probably mention it in some capacity every episode, but now we're really going to home in on it because it's just frustrating to me because we know the statistics of what happens when there's bystander involvement, the layperson. And we could save potentially 2 to 3 times more people. So what the hell are we doing, right? I understand the complexity involved. It does require finance. It's really not entirely simple. And I tend to say, well, it's the politicians, but I do understand that there are obstructions. It's again, it's not that easy to deploy. With that said, it needs the attention and the consideration that it warrants. That we really need to get on this. So if I may, I'm from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. May I just talk about the
You,
bill that's been kicked around?
you absolutely may.
Thank you, because I would anyway. So it's called, and I won't bore everybody, but I would like you to get involved if you're in the Commonwealth, because you can. Bill H.4107. Here's the background. It would require Massachusetts high schools to build CPR and AED training, both, into the health education curriculum. So it creates a CPR and EMS high school training fund. That's how they would want to pay for it. So some of the provisions, you'd have hands-on, critical, CPR and AED training as part of the existing health ed. Okay. 2-year CPR certifications for students who complete it, right? So they take the course, they're all set for 2 years. And then an EMS ambassador program. This is pretty interesting, where EMTs, paramedics visit the high school, me, to
Yep.
promote EMS careers. Financial incentives, $500 scholarships, up to $1,000 tuition credits for students who go on to EMT basic training. So this is also being sold as a career path, or an option at least.
That's
So
awesome.
it would take effect ideally in 2027, but that's not happening. So the bill was introduced in 2025, so not a long time ago, and it just keeps getting, as I like to say, kicked around. Okay. And
Yep.
what I've been doing, so I could, rather than complain, which is, where I go first, I am a complainer. I'm taking action by emailing, the commissioner, because this is supposed to go to the graduation council, as it's called. The graduation contact commissioner is Ken Gordon. We'll put his email in the show notes. Now, I have nothing against this person. I know nothing about him, but I've been sending many emails, and I've encouraged others to send these emails. Bridget has, and we have yet to receive a response. So that's a little disheartening, but it won't deter my motivation, and in fact increases it. So this is important. I mean, and it's also, I understand this isn't a topic people want to think about. That's just how
Right.
it is. Me, it's always on my mind, doesn't bother me at all. It's part of reality. But it wasn't necessarily like that prior to me entering this industry. So it's just showing awareness, because like I always say, these incidents occur at home most often. And if your loved one
Right.
goes down and you don't know what to do, to be blunt, that sucks, because you will regret not being able to participate or be active in that resuscitation attempt. That is most likely would be the
And
case.
wouldn't it be amazing if there was, a high school kid around who has recently taken a class and can then, whether it's your child or someone in the neighborhood that you're like, help, and someone can actually run into your house and actually
Seriously.
help with some sort of knowledge, and support. It's we actually had a high school student just this winter reach out to us in Mass, and
Yep.
that was one of the big things. She's actually thinking about going to nursing school, and for her, they all have to do a junior year project, and her project that she wanted to do, it had to be something that they wanted to impact their class, or something that would be long lasting. And she really wanted to get as many of her of her student class trained in CPR. She's an athlete, and so a lot of her lacrosse team came, but then she got a whole big group of kids. And Mike and I were able to go, and it was great. We were able to go, and we volunteered to go and train all of them in CPR and AED use for the adult, pediatric, and infant. And it was a great day because they were excited. They asked
Yes.
great questions. They, brought up scenarios that maybe Mike and I hadn't thought about, like we were like, oh, well, let's think through this
Right.
together. And those are the classes that get me jazzed too. Like training
Totally.
people who are really excited to learn this skill, because I think we've talked about, but when we train other healthcare providers and whatever, like that have to have the certification, that do it every 2 years, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
womp, womp. Okay, enough talking. Let's just get through this. Right. And,
Yeah.
even though there's areas for improvement, even with the healthcare providers in their every 2-year certification needs, their skills can always be improved. Everyone's can always be improved. But it just gets us so jazzed to be able to do
Yep.
these courses. And, I will say the flip side, because you did talk about the financial barrier, is that to be able to give cards, to certify
Yeah.
through, whether it's American Red Cross or American Heart Association or whomever you train through, there is a cost associated with the cards. And that's where the hiccup is. Like Mike and I will gladly volunteer our time,
Yep.
but we do have to pay for those cards. So this girl, part of the biggest part of her project, outside of calling me and then, basically we set everything up and collecting names was, that she did go and get some funding, and she was able to work with, the local Rotary and some other folks, and she reached out and they gladly supported, we just broke down how much the card cost per person, and she was able to go and get all that funding, which was great. It was really, she learned a lot, but also, I think we really got a lot out of that day as well.
Totally. And, we don't mean to sound self-congratulatory that we will do this for free and drive out
Yeah.
there. We will, but we're not the only ones. Like
Right.
most other educators in this field that I know are like, yes, because, and you brought up a good point. We've used the term able-bodied twice, and it's like, this is perfect. You need to pounce on this opportunity because they are physically strong. They can do these compressions, which you do need a lot of strength. All right.
Yep.
It is laborious. And so they're the perfect, this is the perfect arena in which to bring these classes. And they're in a classroom every day, except for the 3 months of the summer. So they're used to learning, right?
Right.
And their brains are ripe. I mean, we are ignoring just a population that is crucial,
Yeah.
to this cause. And we're talking about high school, and we don't need to go into here, but middle school too.
Oh, 100%.
Throw it
100%.
in. The AHA with their last guideline says these kids can understand it. It's not,
Oh,
these AEDs are like toys. They really are. They have big pictures,
yeah.
and they look like an old play school toy, and anyone can use it, even these middle school. I'll keep it to high school today, but I'm just saying we are ignoring like an opportunity here.
Yeah, and there, I mean, to your point that they're a toy, there were a couple of AEDs that before they went to market, the companies actually tested them on they gave them trainers, but tested on kindergartners, and they gave
Whoa.
it to them with no directions, and they wanted to see if these kindergartners could figure out how to use it just by the colors of the buttons and the placement and by the prompts. And they did. And they were like, okay, if a kindergartner without directions can do this successfully, and consistently, I think an adult that's stressed out can do this too. And that was kind of, their theory. And it seems to have worked. But, kids at any age, my kids come with me to a lot of my CPR trainings. And I was actually training all of their camp counselors in June, because it makes me feel better knowing that I gave the knowledge. But that way I know that they're trained really well and they know how to respond. And I use their equipment and their, emergency responses to kind of like hone in on at the end, just to reinforce everything. But one of my oldest, actually, who's 11, went and kind of corrected someone on their CPR. And I was like, oh, I guess she's been learning more than I thought. But it's, kids can learn and they want to learn. And when we give them this empowerment, they do get excited. And that's part of when I think we train in the community, at least when I do talk to them about now that you have this knowledge and these skills, I want you to feel empowered to help other people. I feel like when I was young and I took these, classes, I remember taking a babysitter class and whatever when I was younger, and, they'd be like, okay, well, now you have to do it. And, they made it seem more almost stressful, don't mess up and go and use these skills.
Yeah.
And I just want to be I always try to drill in, just go, just help, just assess, just ask someone if they're okay. Just going and checking and calling 911, you're starting the chain of survival.
Precisely.
And that's the biggest piece of the puzzle.
Right. And that's sometimes and I totally agree, because often they're like, what if I'm not doing this right? What if this doesn't work? What if I don't remember all of my training? I'm like, taking action is part of the training. Like you said, 911 alone, there you go. Because that's one of the first things we're supposed to do outside of scene safety. One of the first things we do. Right. So It's like, those actions count, and there is no instruction on it. So these procedures are simple. Okay. The protocol is not that difficult to follow. So I totally try to communicate that. And that's why you keep an air of levity in the room as well. Like, not
Right.
like, you're doing those wrong, you suck. Like, don't even bother helping anyone. If I go down, don't, and it's like, no, you can't treat it like that. It has to be a very accessible environment. And I think that's absolutely where they thrive. And when we went to that class, not only do they feel empowered, but not to be morbid, but there's a lot of laughing. They have fun, like, with
Yeah.
this, and that's the way to get to them, right?
Yeah.
They
'Cause
just have a good time.
yeah, like you create an air of psychological safety, but
Mm.
also like they can ask questions, and they ask questions sometimes that have nothing to do with CPR or whatever, but because Mike's in a medic and I'm a nurse, so once we explain who we are and they kind of like feel comfortable, they ask us a multitude of questions too about other things.
Yeah,
Some of which we have the answers for, and some of which are just like off the wall, like, oh, let's figure this out. But it's always so fun and exciting, and they all walk away with something. And I always, whenever I speak, whether it's nationally or locally or whatever, my ultimate objective and my goal is that somebody learns at least one little thing and they walk away with something that will change how they respond to an arrest.
hmm,
And seeing all of these kids like learn these skills and feel like excited about it, it makes me it reinvigorates me
totally.
about sudden cardiac arrest, and it makes me feel better because sometimes being, focused on resuscitation is kind of like a wah, wah kind of field, because it's despite all the work that we do, whether it's in hospital or pre-hospital, like the statistics don't change that much every year, like we always hope that we are finding these like big things
Yeah,
that are going to change. But, I honestly think that the biggest change is getting more bystanders to help out and
clearly.
to feel empowered to help. And by working with these student bodies would be huge. I know Mike talked about Massachusetts, but I live in the state of Connecticut. I don't often work here, but every now and again. But similar things is that I've offered to do free CPR courses, and it's kind of been turned down.
Yeah,
Um, and whilst it is mandated that schools train for CPR here in Connecticut, they weren't given any funding. So,
yeah,
I mean, that's another piece of the puzzle, right?
a big
Because
one.
not everyone is going to go in and offer to do this for free. And I'm no one's looking, I think, to be made a millionaire off of training CPR, right? I mean, maybe there's someone out there. But you know, I think that's the hard part for schools too, is to find people that will volunteer their time to come in and to do these trainings for large volumes of kids. So at least having some funding to be able to support, that they get a certification card or they get some sort of confirmation that they've learned CPR is huge. So I think that's, another piece of the puzzle is not just having these bills and these laws saying that it's mandated, but giving the funding too, and
Seriously,
not
yeah.
all these stipulations around it.
Just in what was go and sometimes we get hugs. You got hugged after that class we did in
Oh yeah, we
and
did.
I mean, talk about rewarding. It was so touching when I saw that. I didn't get hugged, but that was really, it was, that was funny. I've never seen that. Like, she was so like enthralled by the class, and she was kind of meek and timid at first. Did
She
you notice? And
was.
then she
Yeah,
just blossomed by the end and was like following you to your car. She almost got
I
in it.
know. She
I
was the
mean, she said
sweetest
she wanted
girl.
to be a doctor. It was like, wow, that was cool. So
Yeah.
that's the response, right? That's an example of what you were describing, of people leaving empowered and excited, which makes us leave empowered and excited.
Yeah,
I did
and
a 2 hour drive on the way home, but I'm like,
yeah, I know,
it's
I was
just
amped the whole time. I was like, "Yes." And, follow-up too is that it might, like you were saying with the bill that would give funding for, EMS training or, help and, tuition reimbursement, et cetera. It also opens kids' minds to maybe something some part of like, whether it's, being an EMT or a medic or, or being a nurse or a doctor or whatever, like it opens their minds to something else, because I also feel like it's a very heavy time in a kid's life. I don't know how, like, it's a big thing when you have to choose where you want to go to college, and people are like, what are you going to do when you grow up? And it's
Right.
like, I don't know.
Right.
But
Get
we
out of my
offer them,
face.
yeah, but we offer them an opportunity to kind of, learn a
Yeah.
little bit more, get a little bit more insight into the various aspects of being a healthcare provider, that it's not
Mhm.
just, you can do a lot of different things. You can focus on resuscitation. You can focus on, I don't know,
Right.
lip injections. I don't know. You can do whatever you want.
Sure. So, but even, okay, so funding, obviously huge.
Yeah.
But what bothers me is the apathetic reception I receive when I have offered my time for free, to do, I'll come back as often as you want, hundreds of people. And I'm not going to name names, but my son's school, I've contacted the superintendent, a former one and the current one. The current one has yet to respond to my offer of, providing this to the entire school, all of them,
Yeah.
and the former said, well, it interferes with the curriculum. And that really bothered me, because my child, I respect the curriculum, but he will come home on a Friday. The backpack goes on the floor. It'll stay there for the weekend, even with all his homework he has to do. And he won't retrieve it until Monday on the way to school. So there is plenty of time. I see these kids show up to half days without their backpacks. They all do that. So don't, spare me the curriculum, because not to disrespect it, but they often ignore it as well with these, the day before vacation, they watch movies. He tells me this.
Oh,
And it's like,
yeah.
well, why can't that 2 hours, 3 max? Why can't that block be reserved for a critical, relevant skill that will open their eyes, and for free? Free.
Mhm. Yep.
So that bothers me, because that is political, right?
Yeah.
That's what that is. So it's apathy, and it's weak.
Yeah. And it's a choice. They're making a choice to be kind of lazy about it, because, there's ways to make it happen. There's always, there's always logistical barriers, but there's also solutions. And it just takes, thinking through it of like, okay, yes, we will accept your offer. This is, we can offer it these 3 blocks throughout the year, instead of the kids watching movies or giving a half day, to this, we can send,
It's
you know,
opportunity missed.
it is. And, we hope that you guys listening, if there's any of you who have been successful in
Yeah.
doing this and getting into schools and being able to support CPR training and for high schools and whatnot, and we're open to any suggestions, and we're going to
Please.
actually pop in, for those of you listening, if you go to our website or wherever you watch our podcast, we'll add some links or some pictures of the states and state by state what's approved and what's not, and where
Yeah.
there's areas for improvement.
And contact information. So you actually,
Yeah.
if you want to, you can reach out to these people, and it takes a couple minutes. It's email now. It's, I don't know if they answer the phone, not yet, but you can take action, and, it doesn't take much.
It doesn't. I mean, we don't always get responses, but we're still taking action, and we're dogs with a bone, so we won't give up.
Yep.
So
Yep.
they've met their match with the Codeheads.
Mhm.
So any
We'll
of
be
you
providing their
Codeheaders-
home addresses as well.
yeah. JK.
Yeah.
So any of you code headers that want to join the plate, and join with us and trying to get CPR into more schools, high schools, middle schools, etc. Reach out, let us know, and we're always happy to have more numbers with us. So until next time.
Bye.
There are 1 million ways to die. We just wanna talk about